The committee will now consider House Bill 1485 by Representative Swanson. The chair lays out House Bill 1485. The chair recognizes Representative Swanson to explain the measure. How many people? We've got 8. Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. I bring before you House Bill 1485, providing academic freedom for teachers within the context of teaching science classes. This bill could be construed to be a cleanup bill that codifies what has been in the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, for nearly 2 decades. Simply put, it provides teachers the ability and freedom to help students understand, analyze, critique, and review in an objective manner the scientific strengths and weaknesses of existing scientific theories. Challenging, evaluating, and revising theories as new data becomes available is both the heart of how science advances and key to getting good students, future scientists, technologists, engineers, mathematicians, inventors, and innovators interested in science-related careers. This bill will provide for limited academic freedom for our public school teachers to explore those sometimes controversial scientific theories in the classroom with their students. Science teachers in particular should be able to teach strengths and weaknesses of controversial theories and hypotheses. Indeed, good teachers use conflict and tension as a tool to get students interested in topics in general and science in particular. Importantly, you cannot have more local control than the teacher in the classroom. This freedom for teachers in House Bill 1485 is limited to framework developed by the State Board of Education. It does not change or direct that framework. Additionally, the bill explicitly states that this freedom may not be construed to promote any religious or non-religious doctrine. Indeed, 2 other states have combined 14 years' experience with similar language with 0 lawsuits and problems. This is an opportunity for Texas to support our science teachers and academic freedom, and in so doing, support science itself. This brings fairness and justice for teachers in the classroom. Members, I believe we have some witnesses. I'll entertain any questions you may have and reserve the right to close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here. Members, any questions for Representative Swanson at this time? You do have several. Of course, Dr. Allen. Yes, of course.
Give me an example of a theory that they cannot teach now.
This bill lays out more that we want them to be able to, it's not to bring forth a new theory, but to be able to evaluate all the strengths and weaknesses, the anything about that. We want them to feel free to discuss, the children to discuss, and anybody to bring up any ideas and look at all that. It brings freedom to the teachers and freedom to the students.
They can't teach theories now?
Many of them are very concerned that they could be in trouble, and some school districts are concerned that they will have lawsuits if they allow their teachers to discuss the strengths or weaknesses in certain areas instead of teaching one certain thing that might be in the book.
Got any theory in mind?
Well, a number of them are listed as just possibilities in the bill. So, but it's basically any of your developing or controversial theories in science.
Okay.
You got it? Okay.
No, I don't got it.
Maybe we can get somebody up here to explain it. So we'll try. You have a right to close. Any other questions? We'll give you a right to close. All right. Tom Maynard.
Thank you.
Testifying for the bill. And full disclosure, Tom is a member of the State Board of Education. Hello.
Well, hello, and good evening, long day. But as always, thank you for what you...
This is easy.
Yeah. There you go. Well, as always, thank you for what you do and the sacrifices that you make and to do what you do. My name is Tom Maynard. I'm a member of the State Board of Education. but I'm representing myself, so my testimony does not necessarily represent or reflect the expressed collective sentiment of the board. And so just want to say that I am testifying for the support of HB 1485. And when this was sent to me, I got to be honest with you, the first thing I asked was, is this really necessary? There's a lot of legislative solutions looking for a problem, always. And so, but I will tell you that in the aftermath of some of the debate that we had recently surrounding our streamlining of science TEKS, I couldn't help but notice a statement made by a particular individual who's quoted as saying that the schools are forbidden by law from even talking about creationism in the classroom. And I had to ask myself the question, well, is that really a law? So I talked to legal counsel, like, well, there is no such law, but I will tell you that there are some people out there that perceive that to be the case. And I think that students come into our classrooms with a variety of perceptions about what they've learned and things like that, and I think it's a teachable moment. I will say that I did do some inquiry that there are some incidents like that, and where teachers feel like that they are afraid, that there's a fear to even mention these things or have that discussion and have an honest discussion. Well, what is the difference between faith and science? So my conversation with legal counsel is, well, so what's the reference? Well, the school attorneys typically then go to the case law, and is that, well, that there are several cases related to that, but the case law gets a little squishy, and what they would prefer is that if something was spelled out that protects the teachers and the school district when they have that honest discussion in the classroom. The bill does protect against a particular viewpoint as far as religion. So that's those are my comments. Questions?
Thank you, Tom. We appreciate it. Members, are there questions for Tom? Go ahead. Go ahead, Representative Burdell. Sure? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, are you sure?
Hi. So I appreciate your train of thought and your explanation of whether or not it's necessary and there might be some misunderstanding or fear, and you want to allay the fear. I guess my question has to do with whether or not, putting the intention aside, whether or not the bill does that. One, because we're talking, what I've heard the most is the sort of intersection or thunderclap between religion and science, right? And making sure that teachers can somehow help students weigh one or the other and dissect the different paths that one of you would take you on. But would that mean that science teachers would have to understand religious doctrine in order to have a conversation about it in the classroom that was...
Well,
in other words, for example, I'm a science teacher. I've got a student who asked me the difference between something that we've talked about from the science textbook and a related issue in Judaism. Mm-hmm. What are my responsibilities as a teacher, were this bill to pass, to talk about that in a way that satisfies the bill?
Yeah, I think that I think that the elephant in the room really is the whole idea of things like creationism or intelligent design and some things like that.
Well, but whatever they are.
Whatever they are. But understand too is that the student may come to you is that remember that the account of creation is not limited to the Judeo-Christian version of that. They may come to you with a Hindu version, or
well, that's sort of my point, though, right?
Exactly.
Is the teacher going to expect it to know or reference any of those?
I don't think so. I think the struggle that people have with that is that, well, and by the way, we expect teachers to teach beyond the TEKS. We understand that is that what is stated in the standards, what the student is supposed to know and know how to do, the student expectations, was never intended to limit speech. But I will tell you that there's kind of a perception out there that if it's not in the TEKS that they can't talk about it.
Right, but you're going into like the First Amendment. I'm not asking about that.
Right.
Right. I'm cool with the First Amendment. I'm talking about whether or not I am.
He's not giving you a hard time. He's being legit.
I'm asking for the level of education, the quality of the education, the depth of knowledge that a teacher is expected to have in order to have a meaningful conversation with a student about something that is beyond what might be found in the science textbook and is in the realm, in this case, of religion. And not just one religion, right?
It could be anything.
Right. What does that look like in real life? And how do you do it in a way where they're not doing a disservice to to either the child or the religion?
Yeah,
because it requires a depth of knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
I think so too.
It is a great question, and I think the answer to that is that I will tell you that, and I spent 13 years in the classroom, and we frequently had honest discussions about very sensitive things, and I think that sometimes what we don't want to have is a teacher that says, somebody asks the question, well, this is what I learned, and that we're studying about this, but that's not the way I was taught, and frequently it involves an issue of faith, and sometimes a teacher does not need to be in a position where they say, well, we can't talk about that.
Right. I guess I want to. I have to respectfully say I feel like you're not answering my question, but I think it's because I'm not asking the question the right way.
Well, and let me continue to see if I can further frame that for you. And so I think that where that goes is that sometimes is that we have to have the question, or the teacher has to facilitate that and say, well let's talk about the difference between faith and science, because science is what we can empirically measure and observe. Faith is faith. It is what it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. But let's talk about that, and let's not be afraid to talk about that, because those are just things that.
Right, but I think that you might be filtering what I'm saying as a challenge to the whole premise of the bill, and that's not what I'm doing.
Sure.
I'm not talking about controversy. I'm not talking about things being uncomfortable.
Right.
Right. I'm not talking about my own beliefs. If any of us have spent any time in a public school setting, we know that, rightly or wrongly, there's a system in place, there's a culture in place where people are petrified of their superiors, right? So teachers are often petrified by vice principals are petrified by principals of superintendents, and everybody's petrified of TEA and you guys, right? And so
we hope not.
Well, I mean, that's
not
just,
of us guys,
except us.
Right. And so my question is, I'm asking from the point of view of a district and a teacher who are trying to make sure that they don't run afoul of a law, which is what they do a lot of. How do we make sure we stay within the lines of the law? And so what I'm saying is, if we're going to introduce this sort of discussion of faith and science in the science class, and it could be in any other subject as well, what are we requiring of teachers on the faith side to be able to discuss? Because we already know what we require them on the science side.
We're not requiring anything of them on the
But how are they supposed to know how to teach when those issues come up? It's beyond what they're already allowed to do and not do.
I think it's an intriguing question.
If I'm a teacher, I'm just like, okay, look, I'm game. Let's do it, right? Everybody, the whole class, research 3 different religions, come and ask, how do I know how to do that? And the reason I'm asking goes to the text of the bill, and then I'll give up the floor, Chairman.
Yeah, I think maybe that, and here's, I don't think that the intent of the language of the bill is for the teachers to necessarily facilitate that, but I think the intent of that is that when that discussion happens, and it's really kind of a student-led kind of thing, is that we're not going to shut the students down and say, well, we can't talk about that, but let's have an honest conversation about that. I don't think the intent of the legislation is to provide a back door into creationism or intelligent design or anything else like that, but just to protect teachers and students when they do have that discussion, that they're not going to be pilloried in a legal sense, and that the school district attorneys and administrators can feel okay about that. They can point to that statute and say, well, yeah, I mean, we're protected.
Yeah, I guess my concern, and I'll end with this, is my concern is I think that knowing what we know about teachers and districts, they go to the laws that we pass looking for guidance. How do I do this? How do I know I'm doing it right? How do I ensure I'm not doing it wrong? Right? I mean, as far as TEKS are concerned, we have TEKS for everything. And so this is something that we're saying you should be able to do. And by the way, this does not say student-led conversation. This is about helping them weigh and analyze and dissect different ways of looking at the same thing. That is not an open forum for conversation. That is teaching. And what I'm saying is, I'm still asking for what guidance we give teachers and how to do that.
Well,
and by the way,
within the construct of the TEKS.
within the construct of the bill, because it's a law. The last part of it says, this section may not be construed to promote any religious or non-religious doctrine or discrimination for or against religion or irreligion or a particular set of religious beliefs or non-beliefs. That's everything. And so in some ways, you're giving both a shield and a sword to everyone. And I guess what I'm saying, if I'm a teacher, I have no idea. In some ways, I'm more petrified now than I was before because I have no idea what side of the line I'm on.
But it's not communicated as an expectation.
Well,
and I would
Well, I would
direct you.
disagree with you, Tom. Anytime that the state legislature passes legislation, there's a policy book. I know you're a state board member, but when you serve on a school board, we get the legislative update from they'll get it in September of this year, and they have to go through that policy, and they have to adopt the policy, and they have to put that policy down. So there will be an expectation that they follow it.
Yeah, and the reason I'm saying this, and I'll let you go, but I spent the whole interim visiting dozens and dozens and dozens of schools, and one of the things I saw at these schools was them having both just an armada of super hungry kids and them throwing away hundreds of pounds of food every week from the cafeteria. And the reason why they're throwing away hundreds of pounds of food is because the law was not giving them direction on what they could and could not do, and because it wasn't clear, they said never mind, and they threw it away. And so that taught me that from the school's perspective, if we're not clear and direct, putting aside our feelings or even the spirit of what we're doing, which I actually understand, if we're not direct, they're not going to know what to do. And so if they're not going to know what to do, we have to ask what the purpose of this is, as opposed to just, if it's student-led discussion, let's just say that. Because right here, it's not about students at all, it's about teachers. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, you bet. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Who do we got from TEA over there that wants to come up and answer my question, Vaughn? He's hiding. He's ducked. Is it Vaughn and Kate? No, this is Vaughn. Oh, Monica. Okay. Hello.
Oh, sorry. Vaughn Byer, General Counsel, neutral on the bill.
Monica Martinez, Associate Commissioner, Standards and Support Services, also on there.
Yeah. Two real quick questions. Either one can answer this that I have. I don't know if anybody else does. The prior testimony we heard that basically said, well, there's nothing in statute to prohibit this currently, right? Is that accurate?
No, there is no current state statute that remarks about this.
Okay. So, in theory, if if you read the legislation, it talks about. I mean, there's a lot of things in here that we do. Create an environment in public elementary and secondary schools, encourage students to explore questions, evidence, develop critical thinking, et cetera, et cetera. Trying to get to the framework, and I think what Representative Bernal hit on was the last two sections of the bill I have on page 2 and 3, items 1 and 2, where it basically says, the section may not be construed to promote any religious doctrine, at the same time discrimination for or against religion, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm trying to understand, in current statute, the premise of this is to talk about, the caption says relating to academic freedom for public school teachers providing science instruction. So what are they prohibited from doing today that this bill would then allow them to do? Nothing.
I'm not sure that there's anything that they're currently prohibited from that this would clearly permit.
Okay. So currently they could do this if they wanted to, but if it goes into statute, is it, so this would be something that, let's say the school, go ahead, Vaughn.
Yeah, so I mean, I can only conjecture, having watched similar type of legislation in past sessions. It could be that at the local level there are institutional practices that are put in place where they kind of just tell the educators at the level, we are going to avoid that topic. That is the bright line rule. It allows us to be safe from any claims that we have violated any kind of constitutional clauses or things. And that runs up against providing a clear academic instruction for the kids, as well as the free speech rights of the educator. In the past, in some of those instances, what they've done is by providing a state statute that clearly provides it. It provides the school district and or the educator a platform to say they can do it. Now, however, like our state statute here would not overcome the constitutional questions that have been resolved by the Supreme Court. For instance, signing this bill, I picked up my handy-dandy guide, since we're in areas that I'm not that much of an expert on. There were states in the past, for instance, on creationism that tried to require the teaching of creationism. That was deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. So a statute that was to say that. Unfortunately, it didn't provide me much guidance in this question here about how much discussion can be had by an educator in a classroom in a setting where something like that came up.
Got it. Where's the bell? Thank you. All right, Aaron, now we'll take other public testimony now. Aaron Ray, testifying for himself, testifying against the bill. If I said that right.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, we'll welcome all of your questions at the end of this. I have extensive experience in this area. My name is Aron, and I'm testifying against House Bill 1485. Its real purpose is not to inform students, but to misinform students, not to develop critical thinking as promised, but to stunt it, to allow for religious indoctrination instead. Rather than teaching the verifiable facts of evolution, climate change, chemical origins of life, and other evident realities which are not controversial in science, this bill seeks to misrepresent the facts, to confuse the students, and conceal what the evidence really is. The real intent of this bill is to permit religiously biased teachers to defeat their own purpose by undermining or avoiding the required lessons, to instead mislead and deceive students with anti-science apologetics of intelligent design creationism, whose claims have all been refuted by a scientific consensus and shown to be fraudulent in American courts. The cases of Edwards versus Aguilar, 1987, which prohibits teaching creationism in the classroom, and Kitzmiller versus Dover, which showed that all of the claims of intelligent design creationism have been falsified and is fraudulent. And then other scientific centuries of scientific studies show that evolution is an inescapable fact of phylogenetics, but there is no truth to creationism whatsoever by any brand. This bill promotes academic fraud because creationism is based entirely on frauds, falsehoods, and fallacies such that it is not even possible to defend it honestly, so believers defend it dishonestly. Because the religious extremist science denialists don't want high school students to learn forbidden knowledge that would refute their preferred delusions. Students have a constitutional right to be right, expecting to be taught actual theories accurately, to competently comprehend science and thus understand reality as it really is, not to be fooled into believing something that was never supported by anything anywhere. After they know what we can show to be true, they have the religious freedom to reject reality and believe in magic if they want to. They have a right to lie to themselves, but the teachers do not have a right to lie to them. We must teach the science unapologetically according to the consensus.
Understood. Thank you. Members, are there questions? I just one quick follow-up. I just want to make sure I understood your testimony quickly. Was that your premise is that the science that's out there, whatever's in the books or however it's being taught, that's the that's what should be delivered relative to our TEKS. Creationism is not, a science, or shouldn't be taught because it doesn't exist. I was trying to understand.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we don't.
You just lost me for a second.
We don't teach the strengths and weaknesses of geosphericity or heliocentricity, despite the fact that there are a whole lot of people in this country who believe that the sun rotates around a flat Earth. That's not science. That's not in any way supported by reality. I know. I caught that.
I was like, what?
Yeah, I run a.
I don't know if he was being funny or because you never know.
I run a popular YouTube channel, and I invited Shaquille O'Neal or any other flat Earth believer to come on my
some
podcast.
Other basketball player that did it too.
Yeah, come on my podcast and try to defend this nonsense because there's no way to do that.
Who? Green? Is it Green? Yeah, from the Warriors?
Yeah. Another thing that's important to bring up is that the author of this bill defended it by saying that it doesn't promote the teaching of creationism. But the school board member voted for it on the explanation that it did in his determination. I just testified, my wife and I both did, before the Board of Education a couple of weeks ago against this very language. Where we saw the Board of Education talking with creationists, including intelligent design representatives from the Discovery Institute, who are actually writing or taking part in writing the science standards for this state, which is wholly inappropriate. Yet there they are. And so they're having this discussion openly about how can we word this to allow the teachers to introduce creationism in the classroom. This is unabashed. I got a video on this on my channel. And I'm shocked that there's not even shame in what they're doing. There's just how can we undermine scientific instruction? You can't have 14-year-olds evaluate a scientific consensus when the teacher usually isn't qualified to do that. But you certainly can't evaluate something that you never understood because it was never taught to you in the first place, because instead you have to give the teacher the option that she can cite Discovery Institute or Answers in Genesis or anything other than the scientific consensus so that you get the counter arguments against science. But the students are never actually taught what the science is. Evolution is demonstrably, verifiably, observably real. And students need to understand that accurate information has practical application. And there is no value to teaching them nonsense instead.
Well, I appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you for waiting us out.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Keep my mouth shut.
Okay. Was it really? Kyrie Irving, too? Yeah, they were just waiting to make it to the finals, just FYI. Because they got to get through, that's right. Piece of cake. We should see him in the finals again. I'm sorry, we're talking about basketball.
Okay, let me make sure you can hear me.
I hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Tell
us your position, your story here.
Okay, I've taught middle school science in both Ector County and Dallas County. After reviewing HB 1485, I'm not sure why teachers or students would need the protection of a new law from a narrow band of science, including climate change, biological evolution, the chemical origins of life, and human cloning. Why is the State Board of Education, with the guidance of academic professionals, entrusted to define what standards should be taught in the state, only to be undermined by rogue teachers and students because they find some science controversial? This is what that looks like inside a classroom. A history teacher at my high school taught students that the earth was flat. Geosphericity is controversial to some. Should we allow teachers to teach that controversy with their finger on the scale for the flat earth? You can have your own opinion, but you can't have your own facts. Also, I've had a student actually tell me in the classroom that they didn't need to know the scientific explanation for how planets are formed because God created planets. First, point me to where God did it is an answer to anything on the advanced placement exams or college entrance exams like the SAT or the ACT. Then tell me what a student learns by abandoning the scientific method and rigorous inquiry and critical thinking by stopping before you start any investigation by concluding God did it. We tell math students, show your work. Do we ever allow a math student to opt out of that work under specious academic freedom cop-outs? We all understand religious freedom. As a teacher in a classroom, if your student asked me, well, that's wonderful. What do you think about God? What about the Establishment Clause also in the First Amendment? Do you want me as an atheist to explain to your student what I think about their religious beliefs? It cuts both
I
ways.
understand you. Thank you. Is there anything else you need to tell us? Your time is up.
Okay, just my conclusion, that creationism has to date given us no predictions, unlike biology, which has applicable I'm losing the word here. But anyways, you can apply it. Like with a fast-evolving bacteria, you can develop antibiotics. You can use it. It makes predictions. To date, intelligent design, creationism, has not improved mankind's understanding of anything. And that's what we want, right? We want our future doctors to understand evolution, biological evolution, so they can apply it, cure cancer, right? This is what I came. That's my conclusion.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you being here this evening.
Okay.
Any questions, members? All right. Thank you very much. Okay. James Allen testifying for himself, testifying against the bill. Hello.
Hello. I would like to thank the committee and the chairman. My name is James Gavin Allen. I go by Gavin, though. I'm representing myself and my little sister, who is currently in high school right now. The people before me talked about how...
James, let me stop you real quick. I have you as James Allen, so
yes.
That's what we're going to go by, James Allen.
Okay.
And I have you against the bill. Tell me, are you against the bill?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead.
The people before me talked about how teaching creationism in schools is academic fraud, but I would like to talk about how it is also academic suppression and, in my opinion, kind of child abuse. Teaching children things that are based on faith rather than facts and logic and reason and peer review and the scientific process is... I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going with that point.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. Keep going, James. You're doing fine.
It's important to understand the world around you and how things work. And if we just tell children that, well, God did it, so there's no reason to question it. If your teacher or leader or representative speaks to the perfect creator of the universe, what would you have a basis to question them? If they're talking to the all-powerful and perfect creator, why would there be any need to think critically about what they're doing if they're receiving the perfect word of the Lord?
Okay. Good enough for me. Members, questions? James, thank you for being here. You're the one that didn't have to go that far at all. I guess you live down here or something like that.
Yes.
Okay, good. We appreciate you being here. Any questions for him? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Franklin Mayo, Texans for Superior Education and Self, testifying for the bill. Franklin Mayo, Texans for Superior. Okay, we'll show Franklin not testifying but for the bill. Kathy Miller, Texas Freedom Network and Self, testifying against the bill. Kathy Miller. We'll show Kathy Miller not testifying but against the bill. Barbara Franston, League of Women Voters of Texas, testifying against the bill. Good Lord, Barbara, you've been waiting here all day. Hello.
Hello. I'm Barbara Franson. I'm testifying as a member and on behalf of the League of Women Voters, and we're opposed to House Bill 1485, but we want to thank you for allowing us to take your time and to be here with you and express our views. I want to share 4 reasons why the League of Women Voters is concerned about this bill. The first reason is that we fear that it opens the doors for teachers to express their opinions and their beliefs instead of sticking with the facts. And we do strongly believe that in a discipline like science that we need to teach the children the facts. We also have concerns that in the bill there's a mention that school principals, school administrators will be limited. They will be prohibited from stopping instruction that is, in their opinion, poor instruction or inaccurate. And even though 1485 says that it is denies promotion of religious doctrine or discrimination, we feel like that is precisely what the bill does, and that a teacher could have opinions and beliefs about things like evolution or climate change, the origin of life, and have the freedom to express those things. And finally, even though the bill claims academic freedom for teachers, and that's a wonderful thing, but the truth is academic freedom does not give us the ability as teachers to just teach whatever we want. And in support of this, I have listed 3 of the TEKs which have been supported and designed by teachers and by scientists. In 3rd grade, one of the TEKs asks for students to analyze empirical data, and that is to encourage critical thinking. In 4th grade, one of the TEKs wants students to connect concepts with the history of science and with the contributions of scientists. And finally, in high school, we're asking students to make inferences based on data, not on opinions, but on data. So I see the red light going. I'm going to just simply say we ask that you oppose 1485, which we feel like opens up 1485. Sorry.
That's okay.
Which opens compromising possibilities.
Okay, Barbara. Thank you very much. Members, any questions? Thank you for hanging with us all day. We saw you early this morning. All right, Jonathan Signs, Texas Value, testifying for the bill. Hello.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jonathan Signs, and I'm an attorney for a statewide nonprofit faith, family, and freedom organization called Texas Values. I'm also a licensed attorney since 2003 in the state of Texas, primarily focusing on the issues of constitutional law. And over the course of that time, have made many appearances at the State Board of Education on these matters.
Tell us that you're for.
And I'm in favor of House Bill 1485.
Okay, please,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed. Yes.
So just from the get-go, I want to set the record straight on a couple of things that have been mentioned. There's been 2 court cases that have been mentioned. One is the Kitzmiller versus Dover case. That's from 2004 from Pennsylvania. That case is not a Supreme Court case, but what it ruled was that in that case, the school district tried to require that intelligent design be taught as an alternative to evolution. House Bill 1485 does not do that, nor does it intend to do that. The other court case that was mentioned was Edwards versus Aguilar. That's a United States Supreme Court case from 1987. In that case, that was a Louisiana statute that required that teachers teach creationism, creation science, when evolution was taught. House Bill 1485 does not require either of those things to happen. So that's a key difference in those Supreme Court cases. That one Supreme Court case and another court case was, in those cases, the school district or state was trying to require a specific teaching as an alternative to evolution. But let me tell you what the U.S. Supreme Court case did say in Edwards versus Aguilar. The court said, we do not imply that a legislature could never require that scientific critiques of prevailing scientific theories be taught. And then it goes on to say, in other cases, they've acknowledged that this is okay to do. And then they go on to say, and this is for the lawyers on the committee, 482 U.S. 594 is the page reference. In a similar way, teaching a variety of scientific theories about the origins of human mankind to school children might be validly done with the clear secular intent of enhancing the effectiveness of science instruction. If any of y'all have seen or attended State Board of Education meetings where these issues come up, where the board members like Tom Maynard and others are just talking about how you teach these issues and how you allow there to be robust discussion if questions come up, there are people that clearly oppose that. And there is a tremendous amount of debate and discussion and controversy, if you will, around these matters that didn't start today. They have been around. If you've seen, I'm citing U.S. Supreme Court cases where these issues come up. So it should be no surprise that there's a climate that continues to exist where teachers could feel apprehensive and some concern. So our support for House Bill 1485, and if you look at it, the instructive language talks about the State Board of Education and school board and administrators not prohibiting a teacher, and they use the word, from helping students understand, analyze, critique. That way, if a school teacher is asked questions or a debate breaks out in the classroom and they're asked questions about this and they want to simply help the discussion along, that they don't feel like that means they're taking a side. They're simply trying to be a part of the support network, and also it give them some comfort that they're not in any way violating law or some Supreme Court decision where they may have been misinformed in the past. And those are just a few of the reasons why we're in support of House Bill 1485.
Thank you very much. Members, is there any questions? Representative Burnell.
Yes. You seem well versed in the law, both federally and locally. Is this something that they cannot do now?
As far as what the bill says, encourage, understand, critique.
In other words, is there a standing prohibition that this bill eliminates?
I'm not aware of there being a specific prohibition, but I will say this: in absence of specificity in the law and the controversy and that surrounds these things oftentimes when they're brought up, I do think it's reasonable how some people without this specificity in the law would be concerned and questionable about whether or not they have that protection, if that's fair to say.
Sure. So I agree. So we agree that there's no prohibition, but your argument is there's no specificity. Do you argue that there is specificity in this bill that gives guidance to teachers on what they can and cannot do, or should and shouldn't do?
I do think that there's specific guidance here, and I think
tell me what language that is.
Yeah,
because the word you used was help, and I'm not sure that's defined anywhere in the code.
That's right. And if you look at on page 2, starting at line 16 in subsection B, and I just use that as the operative word for the teacher, helping the students understand, analyze, critique, and review in an objective manner. So signaling they don't have to take one side or the other, or to suggest that they are taking the student side over another student side. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
Not about the side of whether or not these issues of science exist, but taking the side particularly of a student that may have questions.
But does that objectivity requirement, does that objective language require that every time there is another viewpoint that is separate or different from the science that's being taught in the classroom, that the teacher has an obligation to treat it objectively?
I don't see anything that suggests that there is a specific obligation that the teacher engage at a certain level.
So if the teacher didn't treat it objectively, would they not be in violation of your reading of the bill?
I'm not saying that they should, that they wouldn't be expected to treat it objectively. I'm saying, and I think that that's clear in the law, the proposed bill, that is the goal and that's the language that's used. I'm saying that I don't think it requires them to engage. It simply says when that opportunity comes up, that they're not banned from doing that they're not censored if they feel like they need to step in, or they feel like there's a discussion going on.
So if they weren't
weren't
objective, and by objective I'm saying being treated in a balanced, neutral way, if they weren't objective about a viewpoint, would they not run afoul of the last section of the new language, which is discrimination for, against religion or irreligion on a particular set of religious beliefs or non-beliefs?
I don't think there's anything in the law that suggests they shouldn't be objective. And I don't know if I answered the question correctly or if I misled you about what I said. That wasn't my intention, so I apologize.
I'm not saying you're misleading. I'm saying, my perspective is that in my opinion, there's no way to be objective with every viewpoint that's beyond the scope of, let's say, the textbook, and to not impede upon someone's religious or irreligious beliefs. Those two things cannot, in my mind, occupy the same space. I'd like to take you back. I'd like to ask you to revisit the Edwards decision.
Sure.
You have it?
Yes.
The first line of the Edwards decision, the section of it that you read, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. We do, the first quote I gave you, we do not imply.
Yes.
We do not imply that a legislature could never require that scientific critiques of prevailing scientific theories be taught.
Right. And I'd like you to stop there.
And their theories.
But the operative word in that section is taught. The Supreme Court is talking about teaching, right? Not helping, not facilitating, not creating a safe space. They're talking about teaching. And I think we very clearly, 10 minutes ago, I was told this is not about teaching because there's no guidance given to teachers, there's no professional development requirement, there's nothing that we're adding to the education of teachers to deal with this issue. So I would argue that Edwards, doesn't apply at all because it's about teaching. And apparently this isn't. And so the point I'm trying to make, you guys keep talking about controversy and making people uncomfortable. I'm not. I'm talking about what we're expecting of teachers, what guidance we're giving them, and whether or not we're setting them up to fail by not telling them exactly what we want to do. This probably makes us feel good, but I think it puts them at a disadvantage because they have no idea what they can and cannot do after we pass this bill, right? And so I'm not, however, a bill that talked about creating safe spaces and facilitating conversation, I'd be all about that. I think that'd be great. I'm just asking you guys to look at this bill from the perspective of someone who has to follow it and execute it, and I think those experiences are very different. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions?
There's one
Representative Bohack, yes, sir.
Jonathan, welcome. My
sir?
takeaway was that was the great part of your testimony was you reading that case. What was that case called again?
Edwards versus Aguilar.
Edwards, and it talks about all these things being theories. These are all just scientific theories. We had earlier testimony that these were facts, indisputable facts, when in fact they're not necessarily indisputable facts. They are theories, and there are multiple theories about the origins of man and about the origins of the universe and other things of that nature that could be brought up in a classroom setting.
Well, there is a lot of talk about that in at State Board of Education meetings. I'm not a scientist, but I do hear what happens in those meetings. I read things, and there does appear to be a lot of discussion from year to year in the scientific community about a lot of things, about revisiting things, making sure they've got their information correct, new discoveries. I mean, that's a lot of what it appears what science is about. I've sat in a lot of those board meetings, and I will tell you, one of the things that I think a lot of people have that concern is when you have people that are very intelligent, that have the right letters behind their names, that apparently, have gone to the right types of schools, if you will, and universities, and they bring forth information on these issues, and they're treated with disrespect, and there is an effort to really discredit them. And so it leaves you with the impression, you can imagine if you're a teacher sitting in that room and you're simply trying to figure out how to navigate these things, and you feel that there's this hostile environment. And so I think that's what we're seeing in sometimes in education, that teachers are worried. They know there's court cases that are come out on these issues, and so they don't want to run afoul. And so I think legislation like this, while you've got TEKs that are more instructive about what is to be taught, this is, I think, assuring people, as I said, specifically, that they have the ability to do that, and you've got something now that's in statute and not just something that's a State Board of Education policy. So, and with that, in my comments, unless there are any other questions. Thank you.
I don't think so. Thank you for staying with us all day.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate you being here. Okay, is there anybody else that would like to testify on, for, or against? You've already testified. House Bill 1485. If not,
yes, sir. I'd like to
did you sign up?
I signed it, but I signed not to testify.
All right, give us your name, please, sir.
My name is Matt Long.
All right, Mr. Long, come on down.
Thank you, sir.
Were you for? We got you. I think. Hold on, Matt. Matt Long, testifying for yourself. You got a woodworker. That's very interesting. I think you got a little typo there, Matt. But that's
Sorry
okay.
about that.
No, it's no big deal. You're testifying for the bill. Go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. My name is Matt Long. I'm here to testify in favor of 1485, and I'm testifying for myself. And I, as well, was a middle school science teacher, and I've really been for quite a few years, and I've really been listening to a lot of this. And I would like to go back to Representative Allen's very early question: is there a theory that we cannot teach now? And Mr. Science just kind of spoke to that. There is this climate, boy, that was the wrong word. There is this climate of that if you don't fall into lockstep with global climate change, anthropogenic global climate change, if you don't just follow into lockstep with that, then you're a science denier. And so is there a law prohibiting that? No, there's no law. The pressure, though, coming all the way down from the President of the United States, who said that it is consensus that the scientists of the world believe in this anthropogenic climate change, and then he also said the science is settled. And at that point in time, I believe Galileo and Galileo and Einstein twirled in their graves. Einstein said the science we should always question. We should always question. And the science is never settled. Ever. Science is never settled. Consensus is not science. Consensus is not science. Science is where you retest and retest over and over under different conditions by different people over periods of time, and then you eventually come to a theory that becomes a very, very strong theory, and in very, very few occasions becomes a law, and we say, okay, this is it. And so consensus is not science. Had that been true, Galileo, the consensus at the time of Galileo, the consensus of the wisest people in the world at the time of Galileo was that the Earth was the center of the universe. And Galileo's looking up there with a really cheap telescope that the equivalent of power something we could buy in a dime store today, and he saw 4 little tiny dots of light moving around something else, and it was moons around Jupiter. And when he published that material, he was imprisoned. He was imprisoned for speaking against the consensus. Portland School District a year ago, in fact, I graduated from Oregon State University, and I taught my first 2 years of school were in Portland. I saw in the Portland school last year, a year ago this month, they are banning any books or any materials that suggest that climate change is not occurring or that human beings are not responsible for it. We need to discuss these things, climate change as theory, because they are that. They are theory. Anthropogenic climate change is a theory. We are to the point where there's people sitting behind me right now commenting on what an idiot I am, denying that the science, being a science denier. And I am not a science denier. In fact, I am fighting hardcore for science. And I want theories to be taught as theories, and I don't want a teacher, a single teacher, to be afraid to stand up in front of the classroom and say, you know, let's take a look at this theory of anthropogenic global climate change.
Thank you,
sir.
Matt. We appreciate you being here very much. I was just telling my colleague, Representative Burnell, about climate change. You know that most creates the most problems for gases in the U.S. You know what the #1 thing is?
Probably cows.
Look at you.
The back end of a cow.
That's from my natural gas business days, right
yes,
there, brother.
Yes, sir.
So,
absolutely.
That's right. We used to talk about it. Created the most dioxins.
That's right.
Right. What's
right.
#2?
Humans?
We'll let you think about that. You
Subarus.
See you later. We're going to move on from this bill. Is there anybody else that would like to testify on for or against House Bill 1483? If not, we'll call on Representative Swanson to close on her bill. That was just a fun fact in case anybody really cared. At 10 o'clock at night. Running time with Hubert. That's right.
Thank you, Chairman, members.
On natural gas with you. Yeah, go ahead.
I enjoyed your fun fact. Thank you.
You betcha.
I plan to only have a sentence for a close, but I do feel like that the bill was misportrayed by some of our.
You had both sides there, though, so it's okay.
We did, but it is not. We have certainly some of our statewide atheist leaders who would like to censor teachers in the classroom. As you can see, this happens in testimony at the State Board of Education and here. And if we were still stuck back, as they want, to censoring all the teachers and never allowing scientists or teachers or students to ever question anything, you heard examples of how we would still believe in flat earth. We'd still believe all these different things. We want them to be able to question. This is not about bringing in new theories. If you read the bill, it still limits the teachers to only the framework set by the State Board of Education. These other theories, the religious theories, the other theories, old theories that were mentioned, are not part of the State Board of Education framework, so they cannot be brought in. This is about being able to question and teach legitimate strengths and weaknesses of the theories that are in that framework. The bill is permissive in nature. It allows teachers to do it. There is no requirement, as Representative Bernal brought up their question, there is definitely no requirement for them to do that. We want to give them that freedom, take away the fear, and the media is constantly telling teachers that it is against the law, as you've heard, which of course is not true. We feel like a bill making it clear that they can do that is definitely needed. To answer Representative Allen's question, some of the things listed in the bill include that we want them to be able to list the strengths and weaknesses of. Just examples would be climate change. As you know, things keep coming up where we find that certain scientists have faked their results on temperature readings, many other things. Those things need to be examined. We constantly find out that the changes in the predicted temperatures for climate change have not happened. Many of the strongest proponents of climate change are now coming out and saying it's simply not true and that we need to reevaluate that. But our censors that we heard about do not want our students to be able to know that these weaknesses have happened. We've got to stop that. We've got to free our teachers to where they don't live in fear of frivolous accusations, and they can be confident talking about the facts, the questions that come up. So, some of the things we certainly don't know. There's no knowledge of how DNA was formed, the information, where did that DNA come from. All these things need to be able to be questioned. If we are going to get kids excited about science, questioning things, if they're going to make new discoveries for the future, we better let them question things now. So I actually just ask you to please allow teachers to stop living in fear of frivolous accusations and let them explain the truth about anything that comes up within the framework set by the State Board of Education. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Swanson. Members, any questions? All right. Well, thank you. At this time, House Bill 1485 will be left pending.